definitely missed in Attack on Titan. If you paid very close attention during the awards ceremony when the scouts returned from Shiganshina, then you would have noticed that the medal that Historia gave Eren, combined with the buttons on her robe, actually resembles the exact same shape as Eren's founding Titan. Did you know that the AOT manga never reached chapter 140? But why not? Well, Isayama has confirmed that the reason for this was because the number 140 means freedom in Japan, which, as we all know, is what Eren kept moving forward to reach, but never did. When Eren and Zeke secretly met up in Marley to discuss their plan, during the scene where Zeke throws his baseball to Eren, if you look closely at their shadows, you'll notice that their heads are missing, directly foreshadowing both of the brothers' fates in the show's ending. Did you know that this moment wasn't supposed to be the first time we saw Eren use the Warhammer's power? In season 4, the military talk about how Eren had escaped from his jail cell. They never actually showed us his breakout in the anime, but in the manga there is a panel that shows the tunnel that Eren made to escape. He used the Warhammer to dig the hole and then fill it up with hardening so that no one could follow him. Everybody knows just how much foreshadowing there is in opening 5 of the show, and the chances are you've seen when it shows Armin burnt up. However, there's actually another hidden frame within this opening. Right before it shows Historia, there is one singular frame where you can actually see Dinah Fritz from the photo that Grisha kept in his journal in the basement. Did you know that in the very first episode of the show, the existence of Marley is actually hinted at? If you go back and look at the very first title card, you can actually see Marley, the ocean, and the walls on Paradis. My theory is that this exact ship is the ship that Reiner, Berthold, Annie, and Marcel travel to Paradis on for the first time. While Annie is about to leave with Falco, Gabi, and the Azumabito, everyone is saying goodbye to her except for Levi, who stays very quiet. This is because he never forgot about the fact that she absolutely decimated his squad and many of his other comrades back in season 1. Seems like he isn't going to forgive her anytime soon. For anyone who has or hasn't read the Attack on Titan guidebook, every character's birthday is listed within that book, and some birthdays hold more significance than others. We all saw how Marco died back in season 1. He was eaten in half by a Titan. But what's crazy is that his birthday is on the 16th of June, which is the exact halfway point in the year. Throughout the show, Armin was always the narrator, but why was this? In the show's ending, when the heroes are heading across the sea back over to Paradis, Armin talks about making their story known and explaining everything. The story that he's referring to is essentially just the plot of Attack on Titan, and the reason why he's the narrator is because the whole show is simply just Armin's telling of the story that we all know and love. Most soldiers use ODM with their index and middle fingers on the trigger. Levi does sometimes do this, however he also has a signature style that is completely unique to himself. Fans like to call this Levi fidget spinner mode. He flips one of his swords backwards and instead uses his pinky and ring finger to operate his ODM gear, which is why losing both his middle and index fingers wasn't enough to stop humanity's strongest soldier. In the very first episode of the show, when we first see the scouts in action, we briefly see the character of Moses. However, if you're an anime only like myself, you wouldn't have known this about him. In the manga, his mother calls Moses by his last name, which is Brown. As we all know, this is also Reiner's second name. This could mean that some of Reiner's ancestors fled to Paradis with Karl Fritz. In the episode From You 2000 Years Ago, we're shown Ymir's backstory. As she's running away from the people chasing her, we see a bloodied flower. But what's special about this flower is that there are 9 petals, which is how many Titan powers there actually are. But what's even crazier is that when all of the other slaves snitch on Ymir, there are 13 hands pointing at her. And as we know, a Titan shifter only lives for 13 years. In season 4, when Peak and Galliard infiltrated Paradis, at first we see Galliard in a garrison uniform. However, just a few episodes later, which in real time was probably just a few minutes, he can be seen wearing a Survey Corps uniform, one of the show's very few mistakes. We all knew that Gabi was supposed to be the sort of Marleyan version of Eren, but what's interesting is that her whole character design is based on a sketch that Isayama did of a female Eren Yeager. So Gabri is quite literally a female Eren. In the very first episode of the show, when we meet Armin for the first time, we see these guys bullying him. But what actually happened to them? Isayama has stated before how much he hates bullying, so naturally he wanted to kill them off ASAP. When the Colossal Titan kicks down the wall in season 1, you can actually see the main bully getting hit by a massive boulder. Did you notice that the last 2 members of the Yeager family were killed by the last 2 members of the Ackerman family? When Hanji dies, we see her reunite with some of the scouts in the afterlife. But did you ever look at who was actually there? We can actually see Erwin, Mike, Moblit, Keith Shadis, Nanaba, Sasha, Dieter, Ian, and even Ymir. But if you take an even closer look, you can also see Flock, who is keeping his distance from the rest of the scouts. In the second ending sequence of Season 1, the identities of the warriors and Ymir are actually foreshadowed. We can see all of the scouts next to one of the walls. It then transitions to the other side of the wall where we see Annie, Reiner, Berthold, and Ymir all standing behind the wall. And as we know now, these characters came from across the sea over on Marley. We all know that the very first founding Titan was created by a combination of Ymir's wishes and the power of this strange worm. What's crazy though is that this worm isn't just some random mythical creature that Isayama made up to fit the plot of AOT. It's actually a real-life creature. The hallucigenia is an extinct type of marine worm, and Isayama has stated that the reason why he chose this creature in particular was because it was one of the very first worms in all existence. In Season 2, when some of the scouts are taking refuge in the castle ruins, Reiner walks in on Ymir rummaging through a box of canned food. More specifically, herring. However, when she passes the can to Reiner, he was completely startled by this. The reason? Because the writing on the can was actually in Marleyan. But seeing as they both understood the language, they both revealed to each other their true identities. Another one from Season 2, when the scouts are told to evacuate all nearby villages, after they thought that Wall Rose had been breached, we see Sasha saving a girl from a creepily small titan. What many people may have missed is that this titan was actually Connie's dad. The titans that were inside the walls that day were simply the citizens of Ragako after Zeke turned them into titans. Throughout the show, there are a few times where we see Levi drinking tea, but did you notice that he holds his cup in a very strange way? Well, the reason why he does this is because back when he lived in the underground, he once bought himself an expensive cup of black tea, having saved up money for a while. However, when he picked it up by its handle, it instantly broke and spilled all over him, so now he only holds his cups from the rims. Before the scouts set out to kill Rod Reese, Levi tells Historia that she needs to become the queen. Mikasa then tells her that she could hit him after all of this was over. When Historia does punch him, Levi laughs. Not only was this the first and last time we see Levi smile in the show, but there's actually more to it. Part of the reason why Levi was smiling was because he was happy that for once, his squad managed to survive. During Eren and Armin's final conversation, there's a hidden detail that has a truly sad meaning behind it. We all remember back in Season 3 when Armin picks up a seashell after the scouts finally made it to the ocean. Eren was the only one who didn't see it. He first saw the shell during his and Armin's very last conversation. The reason he didn't see it before was because he was too busy looking ahead at his enemies beyond the ocean. When Hanji and Levi are torturing Sanis to try and get information about the royal family from him, we see Hanji use a variety of methods on him, but this one unsurprisingly missed the final cut. This gadget is essentially a nutcracker, if you get what I'm saying. The device works by putting the nuts in said device, and then the screw at the top is twisted until it crushes what's inside. Luckily for Sanis, before the device was used, he gave up all the information that was needed, so Hanji never ended up using it. When Armin came to the suspicion that the female titan could be looking for Eren, he comes up with the idea of hiding their faces as they go to attack her. He does this because he believes that it won't kill anyone unless it confirms that they aren't Eren. However, when Reiner goes to attack her, he takes his hood down. The reason he did this was so that Annie would know that it was Reiner and therefore allow him to escape. Everyone knows just how much foreshadowing there is in the openings of the show. If you look very closely amongst the cool visuals in Opening 6, My War, you'll see this massive smoke cloud appear above a couple buildings, directly foreshadowing the Rumbling's arrival at Fort Salta. During Season 1 Episode 2, when Eren, Mikasa, Armin, and all of the other people of Shiganshina are evacuating to Wall Rose, if you pay close attention, you'll actually be able to spot Annie amongst the refugees. Also, later on in the same episode, before many people were sent to their death in an attempt to solve famine, you'll notice that Reiner and Berthold were also in the crowd. During the show's finale, when all of the scouts and Marleyan warriors are reuniting with each other and their families, we all know that Connie and Jan somehow managed to see Sasha. However, if you look closely, you'll actually be able to notice that in the background you can see her fade away and Connie immediately starts to cry. A truly heartbreaking detail. We all remember when the Colossal Titan grabs the wall before destroying it back in Season 1. But did you know that during the Return to Shiganshina arc, as Eren is going to transform to seal the wall, the same damage is still there. In the final episode when Armin broke down crying after he saw Mikasa holding Eren's head, he wasn't with the scouts when they decided that they had to kill Eren to stop the rumbling, meaning that this moment where he breaks down was the first he heard of the new plan. Page 13 is the only page in the entire AOT manga that is numbered, featuring the scene where Eren wakes up from his dream under the infamous tree. This is directly foreshadowing his death and return to the tree 13 years later. Throughout the show, we all saw Eren go through a variety of different hairstyles. But if you look closely at different points, you'll notice that they all somewhat resemble the haircuts of the previous holders of his titans. When he saw his dad's memories in jail, he had a similar hairstyle to Grisha. We all know his famous man bun from after he ate the Warhammer Titan as well. And sometimes he even had a similar hairstyle to Frida Reese. Throughout the show, our main three characters often follow a similar order. Eren always rushing ahead, Mikasa chasing close after him, and Armin trailing behind. In Paths, Armin talks about the time that they once raced to the tree on top of the hill, which further highlights this dynamic. But did you notice that in the ending of the show, it shows Armin once again being the last to the tree, except this time, he was the only one left alive. During season 1 of the show, when Eren and the others join the training corps, we see Eren miserably fail his ODM training exercise. However, if you looked very closely when they arrived back after the incident, you can actually see Titan steam coming from his injury. We all remember Reiner and Bertholtz reveal as the armored and colossal titans, but if you look very closely just before they transform, you'll actually be able to see one frame of their respective titan forms. Isayama included a few titans that were designed based on real-life people in AOT. For example, you probably know about these titans in the manga based on Eren and Mikasa's Japanese voice actors. But if you looked very closely in season 4, you might have noticed this titan right here, which of course is a reference to the TV show Better Call Saul. Before Isayama began making Attack on Titan, he used to work in an internet cafe, and one day a foreign customer came up to him, grabbed him by the shirt and started shouting at him. Obviously, Isayama couldn't understand what the guy was saying, and he would later try to convey this fear of something you can't understand through the show's pure titans. In the show's second ending sequence that plays during season 1 part 2, you will notice one scene where Mikasa is stood next to a praying mantis. Now at first glance this may seem like nothing, however this is not the case. For those of you who don't know, female praying mantises are known for cutting off their partner's heads, directly foreshadowing AOT's ending. Back at the end of season 1, when Eren is fighting Annie in his berserk titan form, he says, "I'll destroy the entire world." And initially it may have come across like he was just angry about how Annie betrayed him, but as we know now, bro was being completely serious. We all remember Tom Ksaver, Zeke's mentor and previous Beast Titan, but did you notice that he actually appears in the show well before we saw him during Zeke's backstory? Back in season 3 during Grisha's backstory, you can actually spot him right when Grisha is about to leave the walls with his sister.